Mandhata. Maharaj Ambarish had 3 sons named Virupa, Ketuman and Shambhu. The son of Virupa was Prashadashva and his son was Rahitara. Rahitara had no sons, but when he requested the favor of the great sage Angira, the sage begot several sons in the womb of Rahitara's wife. When the sons were born, they became the dynasty of Angira Rishi and of Rahitara. The son of Manu was Ikshvaku, who had 100 sons, of whom Vikukshi, Nimi, and Dandaka were the eldest. The sons of Maharaj Ikshvaku became kings of different parts of the world. Because of violating sacrificial rules and regulations, one of these sons, Vikukshi, was banished from the kingdom. By the mercy of Vasishta and the power of mystic yoga, Maharaj Ikshvaku attained liberation after giving up his material body. When Maharaj Ikshvaku expired, his son Vikukshi returned and took charge of the kingdom. He performed various types of sacrifices and thus he pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Vikukshi later became celebrated as Sashada. Vikukshi's sons fought with the demons for the sake of the demigods, and because of his valuable service, he became famous as Puranjaya, Indravaha, and Kakutsha. The son of Puranjaya was Anana, the son of Anana was Prithu, and the son of Prithu was Vishwagandhi. The son of Vishwagandhi was Chandra, the son of Chandra was Yuvanashva, and his son was Shavasta, who constructed Shavastapuri. The son of Shavasta was Brihadashva. Brihadashva's son Kuvalayashva killed a demon named Dundhu, and thus he became celebrated as Dundumara, the killer of Dundu. The sons of the killer of Dundu were Dridashva, Kapilashva, and Bhadrashva. He also had thousands of other sons, but they burned to ashes in the fire emanating from Dundu. The son of Drihadashva was Haryashva, the son of Haryashva was Nikumba, the son of Nikumba was Bahulashva, and the son of Bahulashva was Krishashva. The son of Krishashva was Senajit, and his son was Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva married 100 wives, but he had no sons, and therefore he entered the forest. In the forest, the sages performed a sacrifice known as Indra Yagya on his behalf. Once, however, the king became so thirsty in the forest that he drank the water kept for performing yagya. Consequently, after some time, a son came forth from the right side of his abdomen. So be careful of what you drink. The son, who was very beautiful, was crying to drink breast milk, and Indra gave the child his index finger to suck. Thus the son became known as Mandhata. In due course of time, Yuvanashva achieved perfection by performing austerities. Thereafter, Mandhata became the emperor and ruled the earth, which consists of 7 islands. Thieves and rogues were very much afraid of the powerful king, and therefore the king was known as Trasadasyu, meaning one who is very fearful to rogues and thieves. Mandhata begot sons in the womb of his wife, Bindumati. These sons were Purukutsa, Ambarisha, and Muchukunda. These 3 sons had 50 sisters, all of whom became wives of the great sage known as Saubari. In this connection, Shukadeva Goswami described the history of Saubhari Muni, who, because of sensual agitation caused by fish, fell from his yoga and wanted to marry all the daughters of Manhattan for sexual pleasure. Later, Saubhari Muni became very regretful. Thus, he accepted the order of Vanaprastha, performed very severe austerities, and thus attained perfection. In this regard, Shukadeva Goswami described how Saubhari Muni's wives also became perfect. So text number 1 has no purport. That's why we'll chant responsibly text number 2. So I'll just read 1. Shishuko vacha virappa ketuman chambur ambarisha sutastraya virupat prishadashvabhut tat putrastu rahitaraha. Shukadeva Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, Ambarish had 3 sons named Virupa, Ketuman, and Shambhu. From Virupa came a son named Prishadashva, and from Prishadashva came a son named Rahitara. So text number 2, please chant responsively. Rahitarasya prajasya Rahitarasya prajasya Bharyayam tantavetita Bharyayam tantavetita Angirajanayam asam Angirajanayam asa Brahmavarchasvina sutan Brahmavarchasvina sutan Rahitarasya prajasya Bharyayam tantave artita Angira janayamasa Brahmavarchasvina sutan. Please. Rahitarasya prajasya Bharyayam tantave tita Angira janayamasa Brahmavarchasvina sutan. Rahitarasya prajasya Bharyayam tantavetita Angirajanayamasa Brahmavarchasvina sutan. Ladies, please. Rahitarasya prajasya Ayam tantavetita Angirajanayamasa Brahmavarchasvina sutan. Rahitarasya prajasya Bharyayam tantavedita Angirajanayamasa Brahmavarchasvina sutan. Rahitarasya of Rahitara Aprajasya who had no sons Bharyayam unto his wife Tantave for increasing offspring Artitaha being requested Angiraha the great sage Angira Janayamasa caused to take birth Brahma Varchasvina, who had Brahminical qualities. Sutan, sons. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Rahitara had no sons, and therefore he requested the great sage Angira to beget sons for him. Because of this request, Angira begot sons in the womb of Rahitara's wife. All these sons were born with Brahminical prowess. Purport. In the Vedic age, a man who was sometimes called upon to beget sons in the womb of a lesser man's wife for the sake of better progeny. In such an instance, the woman is compared to an agricultural field. A person possessing an agricultural field may employ another person to produce food grains from it, but because the grains are produced from the land, they are considered the property of the owner of the land. Similarly, a woman was sometimes allowed to be impregnated by someone other than her husband, but the sons born of her would then become her husband's sons. Such sons were called Kshetra Jata. Because Rahitara had no sons, he took advantage of this method. So we'll read translations of the verses again. Shukadeva Goswami said, O Maharaj, Parikshit Ambarisha had 3 sons named Virupa, Ketuman, and Shambhu. From Virupa came a son named Prasadasva, and from Prasadasva came a son named Rahitara. Rahitara had no sons, and therefore he requested the great sage Angira to beget sons for him. Because of this request, Angira begot sons in the womb of Rahitara's wife. All these sons were born with Brahminical prowess. So this is a description of the royal dynasties leading to the appearance of Lord Ramachandra and finally Lord Krishna. And we hear that there were many great Vaishnavas, many great saintly personalities amongst those kings. And so this is a very short description of one of those kings, Rahitara, who, as we can understand, was the grandson of Maharaj Ambarishi. And so, being in that lineage, apparently he was extremely saintly personality as well. And we hear about very amazing Vedic standard wherein if a man, specifically king, didn't have sons, couldn't beget sons, he could request somebody else, but somebody else was supposed to be personality who is higher in status to beget a son in the womb of his wife, which is quite shocking for the modern understanding that of course there are plenty of men who would who love to impregnate other men's wives without what to speak of consent, even the knowledge of the husband. But to do it consciously and legitimately, that's kind of unheard of in Kali Yuga. And the reason is that people in Kali Yuga are very different, and that's why these kind of standards are actually forbidden in this age. And that's going to be described further on in the chapter, that there are 5 specific activities which are forbidden in this age: Ashwamedha, Gavalabham, Sanyasam, Palapatrikam, Devarena Sutotpati, Kalopancha, Vibharjayat. That the sacrifice of the horse, of the cow, offering flesh to the forefathers, begetting children in the womb of the brother's wife, and taking sannyas are forbidden in Kali Yuga. So we might be asking, what about sannyas? That Prabhupada took sannyas, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and Lord Chaitanya spoke these words after he took sannyas. And the understanding is that sannyas refers to Mayavad sannyas. But Vaishnava sannyas is actually a good thing. So Mayavadis should not be taking sannyas. Only Vaishnavas should be taking sannyas in Kali Yuga. Because their sannyas is called Yukta Vairagya. They not just renounce, but they actually engage themselves in the devotional service of the Lord fully. And that is practical renunciation. And so, but this is one of the things which is also forbidden in Kali Yuga, begetting children in the womb of the brother's wife. And which was a standard in Vedic age. If you look at it, especially the famous description in Mahabharata, how the king Vichitravirya had no sons, and that's why Satyavati, his mother, she suggested that they could call upon Srila Vyasadeva, who was the elder brother of Vichitravirya, and he begot 2 children in the wombs of his wives, Ambika and Ambalika. Of course, by the will of destiny, by the will of the Lord, it didn't work out exactly as it was hoped for, that one son was born blind and the other one was born sickly, Dhritarashtra and Pandu respectively, because Vyasadeva looked too scary for Ambika and Ambalika, and so one of them closed her eyes upon seeing him, and the other one, even though she managed to keep her eyes open, she turned pale. And so, as a result, blind and pale sons were born from them. This is how the laws of karma work. But this is the instance, this is the proof that these things were happening in the Vedic age, and now they are not happening because they are forbidden by the law, by the spiritual law, because people cannot control their senses. And we can understand, we can actually imagine how much man has to be detached to let other men have sex with his wife. And then how that man has to be detached in order to just do his business and walk away without any claims. Right? And so these things were possible because people controlled their senses, minds and senses, to such an extent that it's very hard for Kali Yuga people to even imagine what kind of sense control was there, because sex life has two primary functions, as we can say. One is procreation and the other one is recreation, right? And so in Kali Yuga, people are focused on sex for recreation to such an extent that procreation become a side product of recreation. And as a result, the kind of children born from recreative sex is called Varna Sankara, right? And these are the horrible people who create hellish environment in Kali Yuga. But people in Vedic age, apparently, they were so focused on procreation that recreation was really, insignificant for them. And that was the power of their spiritual advancement and the power of Krishna consciousness especially. And this is what has been exemplified in the prayer of Yamunacharya, right, quoted in in one of the purports of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yadavadima Macheshta Padaravindayo, that since I'm focused on the lotus feet of Krishna and I derive so much pleasure in his service whenever I think of the insignificant sex pleasures I used to enjoy, my lips curl and I want to spit in disgust, right? Or as Prabhupada would say, I want to spite on it. And so, one senior Vaishnava said, if we would have to spit every single time we think of sex, we would probably, like most of us, would probably end up being dehydrated or something. But this is the consciousness of highly advanced personalities who are so focused on their responsibility before the Lord and before others. First of all, human society, but not even limiting to human society, all the living entities, that they can easily forsake, they can easily sacrifice their sense gratification for that sake. And so this is the culture which follows the knowledge Srila Prabhupada gave us, and this is what Krishna consciousness ultimately is meant to establish, because ultimately we are meant to help the entire human society to advance spiritually and follow high standards which effectively solve all the problems. That's why Srila Prabhupada was saying that Krishna consciousness is the solution to all the problems of the world. And of course, since yesterday we had Prabhupada's disappearance day, anniversary, and His Grace Harisauri Prabhu gave an amazing class at the Srila Indradumna Swami's Parikram opening, and he actually glorified Srila Prabhupada as the one who was so powerful by dint of his sincere following, by dint of his faith, strong faith and sincere following the instruction of his spiritual master, that he did something which no one could do. None of his god brothers were capable of doing, even though they tried so hard. And materially, apparently, they were much more qualified than him. But still, it was Srila Prabhupada who did it. And he was reflecting that on the fact that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati by, dint of his spiritual powers, immediately upon the very first meeting recognized that potential in Srila Prabhupada, and straight away he gave him the instruction of preaching Krishna consciousness in English. And so that was the very first instruction Srila Prabhupada got from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And when he wrote to him a letter shortly before his departure from this world, asking him, Guru Maharaj, how can I serve you? And he got exactly same instruction reconfirmed, that you should preach Krishna consciousness in English. And so this was something Srila Prabhupada did very, very successfully. And I was listening to it and I was thinking that what was Srila Prabhupada's, that was example of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's most important instruction he gave to Srila Prabhupada. But now, as Prabhupada's followers, what is the most important instruction Srila Prabhupada gave to us? Of course, he gave so many instructions, unlimited instructions. But which one do we choose to focus as the primary one? And I was thinking, in the same light, what was the first thing Srila Prabhupada highlighted when he started his preaching? When he actually registered both the League of Devotees in Jhansi and ISKCON, what is the first? And my conviction is that first things first. What is the first, and I would say the foremost purpose of ISKCON? And that is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and teach all people the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life, which is very sophisticated way of saying helping people to solve their problems and achieve real unity and peace in the world. So very serious purpose, very serious goal Srila Prabhupada set for us, that Krishna consciousness movement would actually help the entire planet to achieve real unity and peace for the entire population, right? And we might be scratching our heads thinking, how do we achieve real unity and peace in the world if our own members are not peaceful? And about being united, that's also a serious question about being united, whether we are united even in our own Gaudiya family, or even in even Prabhupada disciples. Are they totally unified about everything? There are so many schisms, etc. So many breakaway groups. So how do we achieve that? And then, of course, in the light of Prabhupada's disappearance, we might also reflect on the instruction which Srila Prabhupada gave shortly before his departure, right? And that is very famous instruction, that your love towards me will be shown by how much you will cooperate with each other, right? And everybody heard about this, that this is what Prabhupada said before his departure, right? How many of you are, I think it's easier to ask how many of you are not aware of that instruction. Anyone is not? Anyone heard it for the first time? Okay, it's unanimous, right? So everybody heard about this. But how many of you heard the circumstances in which this particular instruction was given? Anyone heard? Okay, just very few people. So for the rest of you, it will be very interesting to learn that Srila Prabhupada was already preparing for his departure, lying on his deathbed, as we can say, and one young and enthusiastic disciple came to him and he said, Srila Prabhupada, the world needs you and ISKCON needs you so much that if I could, and of course from Bhagavatam we know that Puru gave his youth and lifespan to Maharaj Yayati, right, in exchange for his old age. And so this young disciple, he said, if I could give you my youth and health and exchange it for your disease and death, I would be very happy to do so. And Prabhupada appreciated it. He said, thank you very much for your love, because this kind of offering could only come due to love. So obviously you love me so much. And then he said, but your real love will be shown by how much you will cooperate with each other. Which is a kind of, for me at least, is a subtle hint. And Prabhupada, being a very aristocratic person, he had very refined sense of humor. So he was hinting that for some devotees, it's easier to die than cooperate with other devotees, right? Because physical death is much easier than the death of the false ego, right? That kind of death is really hard, die-hard thing. And so, again, if we look at ISKCON's situation, and we can understand that charity begins at home, and we need to have a solid mood of cooperation and service and peace and unity in ISKCON if we want to achieve something substantial in the world. Otherwise people will say, what kind of solutions you can bring to us if you yourselves have so many problems, right? But we can recognize one thing, that the problems are existing because the carriers of the problems are in the society. People with lower grades of consciousness, and they have problems themselves and they create problems in the society as well. But we also have devotees who are very, very solid in their consciousness and they have no problems themselves, and moreover they can tolerate all kinds of problems imposed by other devotees as well, those who are problematic. Of course, Srila Prabhupada himself exemplified that. That one time, one devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and he was complaining about some other devotee. And he was saying, Srila Prabhupada, this is what's happening, and what do I do about it? And Prabhupada said, please tolerate. But then this devotee said, how can I tolerate because of this and that, so many reasons? I cannot tolerate. Prabhupada said again, please tolerate. But then this devotee went on, and he said, how can I tolerate? And Prabhupada kind of lost his patience and he said, please tolerate him in the same way I tolerate you. Right? So it's a reality check. And so, yes, luckily we have in our society very, very solid group of devotees with very steady Krishna consciousness who can go ahead and do things regardless of so many strange things happening, right, in the movement. And we can recognize and understand that these devotees are the solution for the movement and for the world. And so while discussing this issue with number of senior leaders in our society, that how do we achieve the first purpose of ISKCON? Everyone agreed that yes, we have to count on these devotees for our success, and even if these devotees are young, but it's really important to support them and help them to establish themselves. And moreover, all the problems we are experiencing in our society are just reflections of the problems which exist in the greater world. Unfortunately, we are susceptible to those influences. Very much so. We are dependent no matter how much we would like of being isolated and independent, we have to depend on the society. And so that's why, in that sense, affecting changes in the world will help to bring about positive changes in our own movement. And that's why Srila Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas were highlighting missionary aspect, because we're fully dependent on that. And so, for that, and we've decided that the best thing to do in this regard would be to empower devotees with highest capacity for leadership to achieve very substantial results, which would be remarkable not just on ISKCON's scale, but on the global scale. And so, of course, for that we require special blessings from Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, we've started what we called Leadership Empowerment School, bringing professional devotees with professional background. And professionals, they have certain advantage which other devotees don't have. They know how to operate within the society. They know how to interact with people properly, which is very, very important quality. And so those professionals who have leadership potential, and train them and empower them and support them to start their own large-scale social spiritual projects to affect the situation globally. And because we know that only devotees can do it, really. And one interesting thing which was brought to my attention by one senior devotee, that the first purpose of ISKCON doesn't even have the word God in it, what to speak of Krishna. It's just very, very broad spiritual knowledge and spiritual techniques of spiritual life for helping the society. Obviously, because Srila Prabhupada envisioned much greater picture of spiritual development than just a religious development of one particular denomination called Hare Krishna movement, right? And that's why you can see so much appreciation Srila Prabhupada expressed for other traditions. And of course we do have differences, but in the face of the greater need, in the face of the greater enemy, we can say, it's really important to put our differences away and work cooperatively to achieve the common goal. And who is the common enemy for all of us? Obviously, it is degraded materialism and militant atheism, right? So this is the greatest enemy, and I was thinking of the analogy of the Second World War, that because the Nazis or fascists were such a huge threat for the entire planet, in the face of that common enemy, even the capitalists and communists put away their differences and created an alliance, right, to address this common problem. And so I'm thinking that exactly the same thing should happen if we really want to defeat materialism and atheism, which is the first and foremost thing to tackle before we can speak about any spiritual advancement seriously. And for that reason we need to establish a serious alliance and cooperation with other sincere practitioners belonging to different traditions. And of course the other thing which Srila Prabhupada envisioned and expressed very clearly his wish for was government support, government cooperation, because governments, they have systems. When we speak about systematic propagation of spiritual knowledge, do we have systems? We might say, okay, some system, but real systems are with the governments, right? And so obviously with their systems, they can help us to achieve the goals we can't even imagine. And so it's really important for us to establish that cooperation. So these are the goals, and of course ultimately and eventually we want Srila Prabhupada to be recognized and glorified, as we sing every day, right? Ebe Yasha Gusha Tribhuvana, let your fame spread all over 3 worlds. And so Srila Prabhupada's fame will become widespread. Everyone will learn about Srila Prabhupada when people will see that this movement actually did something substantial, not just for self-aggrandizement or self-service. Sometimes I'm fearing that Krishna consciousness might become international self-serving society, which the tendency is there, but actually do something for the world, do something for everybody. And because Srila Prabhupada deserves that, definitely. And despite of his, I was thinking that he was highlighting in the physical absence of the spiritual master, the instructions should have to become life and soul of a sincere disciple or follower, right? And so for us, in the physical absence of Srila Prabhupada, his instructions and his primary instruction, as we were saying, that should become our life and soul, because if we act upon Srila Prabhupada's instructions, then he is actually present with us. Despite of his apparent physical absence, he is still here. And at the end, I wanted to share one very interesting story about Srila Prabhupada from Russia, with love, which I've heard from one devotee, that was happening when Russian devotees were heavily prosecuted and put in jails. And so there was one elderly Mataji, whose name was Purnamasi Devidasi, and she was put in jail, but she was so determined in preaching that she never stopped. She was preaching to everybody. She was preaching to the inmates, she was preaching to the guards, and many people were actually taking up to Krishna consciousness in jail because of her influence. And then KGB became so afraid of her that they've decided we have to stop her. Like no other means worked. They made her starve, they were beating her, nothing worked, right? Torturing her, nothing worked. She was becoming stronger and stronger. And then they figured out, okay, let us try a witchcraft on her. right? And so they actually called on a genuine witch to try to, brainwash her. And then that witch came with her assistants, and they put her in front of this witch, and they actually bound her to the chair, and the chair was, bolted to the floor, of course, right? The metal chair. This is what they use in jails. And so she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything. And then this witch and her assistant, they started casting spells on her. And apparently this witch was pretty powerful because she was chanting some incantations to make her ghostly hunted, to put some alien entity inside of her body, right? Some ghost. And so she was saying that she actually felt that some alien entity is entering into in her consciousness because of all these spells, and her consciousness becomes kind of gloomy and dull, and everything darkens gradually. And she tried everything. She was chanting Hare Krishna, she was praying to Nrsingadev. Nothing worked. Absolutely. And she was thinking what to do, and then she started chanting Prabhupada's pranam mantra, praying to Srila Prabhupada for protection. And as soon as she did that, this witch actually paused, and then she said, I cannot continue anymore, I have to leave. And the KGB guys were saying, what do you mean, you are paid to do this job, carry on, looks like it works. She said, no, I cannot, I have to leave now. And she was like shaking, and they were asking, what happened? And she said, well, you cannot see, but next to this woman is an elderly man, and he is really angry, he's shaking with anger, and I cannot do anything about him. So I'm sorry, I have to leave. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, if we have faith in Srila Prabhupada, he is still present with us. And apparently he is even more powerful than the Lord. By serving Srila Prabhupada and following his instructions, we can have him with us all the time. So we have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, you're welcome. Microphone. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I listened to your story with much interest, but I am asking myself, what is the power of the holy name as compared with Prabhupada's personality? That means, at this time, if we don't think about Prabhupada, we are in great danger. So, what is the use of the holy name?
Well, of course, holy name is all-powerful. There is no doubt about it. But apparently, through this story, we can learn that we cannot get Krishna's mercy without the mercy of the spiritual master, specifically Srila Prabhupada. And so, if we think we have direct access to Krishna, it will not work. So I think that's the moral of this story, of this episode.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Welcome.
I appreciate that you have such a broad, progressive vision for spreading Krishna consciousness. I would like to ask if you have, if you can give us some examples of these social, spiritual projects that you spoke of. How to, what do you have in mind?
Sure. Yes. Actually, I don't know, but this is the adventurous part of the whole project of training professionals to become creative leaders, that we don't tell them what they have to come up with. They decide, but then they are coming up with projects which blow the minds of even faculty members. And we could never imagine. And from the last year, the one alumni embarked on creating multi-faith vegetarian eco-village consisting of 1,000 houses, which is a huge project. It's costing close to 1.5 billion American dollars. And he never did anything like that, but we just encouraged him. And he's a professional in construction. He's top construction manager in one company, very good specialist. But of course, he had to go and get his MBA for this project, and he had to create a team of professionals. But they're moving forward with that project, and it's going to be government funded, because they're looking for something like that. The other devotee created spiritual post-rehab ashrams, and he's looking to create the entire rehab and post-rehab system, and also combat stress at the workplace, especially for the hospitals, government hospitals. And another project is very interesting, which is Native American Spiritual Revival Project, because apparently Native Americans had spiritual practices which are so strikingly similar to Vaishnava spiritual practices. We can understand that the roots are the same. And so she wants to promote those Native American practices which are very similar to Vaishnava spiritual practices, to create a kind of platform for people to take up to Krishna consciousness, which is huge. It could affect the lives of tens, if not hundreds of millions of people, because interest towards Native American spirituality is just overwhelming all over the world, what to speak of United States. And as we know, as America goes, the whole world goes, no doubt about it. At least for the next 2 decades, it's going to be like that. As they say that when America catches cold, the whole world starts sneezing, right? So if something good will happen in this country, the whole world will be affected. And there are many more, but we have limited time, so. And if you like to know more, I can tell you a little more individually. So we'll finish here. Thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.